Well, the Prime Minister has announced North Korea's latest missile launch as Indo-Pacific leaders meet at the NATO summit. Let's go live to Trudy McIntosh, who's in Lithuania for the summit. Trudy, what's he had to say?
Well, Tom, a very clear message from Prime Minister Anthony Albanese that security issues here in Europe do affect our region as well. We have seen the meeting this morning of the Indo-Pacific Four. This is the main game for the Prime Minister and why he came all the way to Lithuania. Australia, New Zealand, Japan and South Korea all in the same room with a united message about security issues in our region and why it's so important to be connected with NATO. The Prime Minister is now in the room with world leaders. They are going to have a 2.5-hour behind closed doors discussion about the broader security issues, namely China really, and the potential impact and threat that could cause. We've seen an absolute flurry of world leaders coming past from where I am, the French president, the Turkish president, all rushing to make their way to the final day of this summit. The Prime Minister, though, in his opening remarks of the Indo-Pacific Four meeting, singling out the actions of North Korea overnight. We saw another intercontinental ballistic missile launch. The Prime Minister says it is a timely reminder that there's not only instability and threats here in continental Europe, but there are also threats in our region.
Of the interconnectedness around the world with the once again egregious launch of an ICBM by North Korea overnight. Australia condemns North Korea for once again breaching UN rules and by breaching the international rule of law, and with once again a provocative action. And we stand particularly with our friends in South Korea at this time.
Now, once this Asia-Pacific Four meeting with NATO wraps up, it's due to take around 2.5 hours. It's straight for a meeting for the Prime Minister with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. It's expected that Ukraine will once again push Australia to provide more military assistance in the form of those Bushmaster vehicles, potentially even the Hawkeyes. It'd be very hard to imagine, Tom, that the Prime Minister is not going to have anything new to say when he meets face-to-face with Ukraine's President. He does not get this opportunity very often. The government points out a lot of aid has already been provided, over $770 million, but there will be calls for him to do more.
Meanwhile, no free trade agreement struck with the European Union. And look, the lines the Australian government are not crossing on this seem to be pretty well backed so far by farmers groups, by the opposition as well.
Yeah, that's the case, Tom, that there is bipartisan support back home for the tough position that the Prime Minister and the Trade Minister, Don Farrell, are taking with the European Union. We've just seen the Prime Minister in a meeting with the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and in that we heard some opening remarks from the Prime Minister. He stressed that these sort of deals are very complex to strike. It's been 5 years of negotiations here. At one stage, it was put on ice altogether after the French were outraged by the actions of the former government when it comes to that AUKUS nuclear submarine deal. The negotiations are back on, but as you say, we haven't been able to secure enough access for Australian agricultural products into this lucrative market. The PM points out he's been having meetings with European leaders. Germany and Portugal in the last few days have been publicly supportive of this deal, but Australia making it clear that we're not just going to accept a deal for the sake of it, that it needs to have substantial benefits for Australian producers. This is Agriculture Minister Murray Watt.
We are not prepared to move on any of this until we get the market access for beef, for sheep meat, for sugar, for dairy products and other things that we think Australian farmers deserve.
Australia had been hoping to have this free trade deal wrapped up by the end of July. It seems pretty clear that's not going to happen now. The timeline blowing out. Don Farrell saying the next round of negotiations likely to take place in August. So a continuation of this very long-running process, Tom, to try and strike a free trade deal with the EU worth over billions and billions of dollars. So lucrative if we can manage to do this, but still they're not ready to sign on the dotted line.
Yeah, especially some of those high-end products. Trudy, thank you.